Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the LCCA Board to order on Wednesday, October 25th at 6:05 p.m. The notice of the meeting tonight ran in the Waukesha Freeman on Saturday, is it 21st? Saturday. Also, postings were made at both campuses and on the LCCA website. On to the mission of LCCA. Our mission is to train the minds and improve the hearts of young people through a content-rich classical education in the liberal arts and sciences with instruction in the principles of moral character and civic virtue. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. On to tonight's agenda, which is posted in board docs. Would someone like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll motion.
Motion, second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Tom. Any discussion? All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion passes. On to Citizens Forum, which I don't believe there's anyone here this evening who would like to make a comment, so we will move right on to the consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda for this evening?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Second by Taryn. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion passes. So the first item in the consent agenda is the minutes from the September 12th board meeting. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes? It looks good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. And we're moving on to the school leader report. Margaret.
Thank you. This month's leader report is packed with information. Being October, there's enrollment information, retention information, some projections for enrollment, and comparisons within. And before I get started, just want to thank my leadership team and faculty and staff for the input that they have contributed to this report. A lot of work behind the scenes has gone into it, and most of them are in the room this evening, and I'd just like to thank them for their contributions this month. The main information I'm going to start with is, to begin with, on page 3 in the enrollment section, and I'll kind of, as I go, tie it back to our charter goals and performance measures. But you can see starting on page 3, in September we submitted our third Friday count as 549 to the Department of Instruction. Our current enrollment today is 552 students, with 373 at East and 179 at West. I've given you a breakdown by grade level of enrollment, current enrollment, which grades are full, which grades do have some available seats but no students on the wait list. And this information, September count being 549, we will submit again to DPI in January. And the performance measure for our charter in the financial section regarding enrollment states that the average of our actual September and actual January count divided by our projected budgeted full-time enrollment come in at greater than or equal to 95%. And we are on target to achieve that. Actually on target to exceed 100% of our projected enrollment, since we projected full-time enrollment at anticipating an average of 2% attrition over the course of the year. So our numbers are looking very good in response or accordance with that enrollment variance performance measure with our charter authorizer. Also, you can see on page 3 just some demographic information for your own perusal. You can see we are drawing 26.8% of our students are from the Oconomowoc School District, and then 24.6% of our students come to us from the Kettle Moraine School District. That includes whether they were enrolled in that district or just live in that district and were homeschooled prior. Is not within this demographic. But those are the two districts that we have the highest percentage of students in attendance. On the next page, you can see some additional enrollment demographics, and in accordance with the board docs calendar, I share this information and compare it to the Oconomowoc district demographics from last school year. Those are the most recent demographics that are accessible to me for comparison. And you can see that we are very comparable in our makeup of students in our total enrollment. The additional information as far as enrollment goes is our 23-24 wait list data. At the conclusion of the lottery on February 1st, enrolling for this school year, the wait list held 238 students. The waitlist continued to grow through the month of May. So we peaked in May with 253 students on the waitlist, and beginning in June, we began to draw on that waitlist as we had students withdraw or decline offered seats. And the main reasons for declining an offered seat were that not all the children in a single family were offered a seat, therefore they declined the one that they did receive. Many families shared that they did not want to accept a seat at that time in the summer because they had already put a deposit down at a private school and were committed to following through with that for the school year. Some just had changes in family circumstances that made it less than desirable to accept the seat. Our 24-25 enrollment projections, so we've looked at the information that has brought us to our point now in 23-24, and we're already looking ahead now to 24-25. And the projections for enrollment for the following school year are based on some projections on course offerings in the upper school, as well as facilities capacity. And Mr. Wagner and Dr. Wozniak spent some considerable time attempting to foresee what next year's upper school schedule offerings will be and its repercussions on enrollment capabilities. And so I actually call on them. Dr. Wozniak, I believe, will speak to that planning, and then I can go on into some additional information for next year's enrollment projections.
So the added memo, the tentative West operations, outlines a lot of what Nicholas and I are about to comment on. The complication, if you will, if we call it that, or the challenge that we have is that the high school, middle and high school level, it's not quite as simple as looking at square feet or even simple number of classrooms and number of students. Next year we have to add a section of 12th grade courses, and this year we were helped out by having the 11th grade all in basically one section for each course. Next year we're going to have two sections of 11th grade because the 10 is going to move up. So we're actually adding 3 new sections, or equivalent of 3 new sections, and a whole bunch of new courses for the 12th grade. We have to take into account the idea that there will be some electives added, and so when we look at all of that, we have kind of a summary that we have put together on this operations page. The crux of it comes down to the idea that Nicholas and I sat down and kind of created a mock schedule to a certain degree, at least as much as we were able to do. And that's where the numbers that you see at the top come from, the idea that we have the current classroom spaces is approximately 77. If you look at the periods times the number of classrooms times the number of periods in a day and so forth. And we project conservatively that we're going to need 75 out of those 77 spaces. And that's without looking at any anomalies that might come up in the scheduling process. And by that we mean we don't always have full sections, right? Because of a math level or a science level, some sections are smaller than others. So we can't always say that we're going to fill a classroom with 25 or 30 students. That means that if you just look at the raw capacity of the building, it doesn't equate directly to, well, that's how many students we can manage or hold. We also realized we've been benefited by a couple of things this year that are kind of going to degrade in their their usefulness next year. We were able to fit in the extra rooms that were made in the basement last year, helped us with space tremendously, and shifting space for lunch into the gathering space in the church. Next year, we're going to have even more classroom space. We're going to probably end up having to go to Bridge Church and ask for more space, at least one or two extra spaces that we're not using right now that the church still has. That or we might have to make creative use of the gym and maybe use it as a partial classroom. That could have implications of what gym offerings we can have if we have to use that space for a regular classroom. The other piece that worked out well this year that we're probably going to run into next year is teachers having to move from classroom to classroom. If we do have this, even if on the conservative we have 77 classroom spaces and we need 75, that means that literally almost every classroom is going to use every period. So teachers are going to have to be mobile and they're not going to have a home base. We were concerned that we were going to have to do that this year, but it just worked out just enough that we were able to not have to do that this year, and the teachers do kind of have a home base. So in a nutshell, those are some of the challenges that we're facing with space over here. I think we have a plan that we can manage it for next year, but it is at capacity. Again, with anomalies and other things, it could get a little more challenged and so forth. And Mr. Rager, I don't know if you want to add to.
Yeah, some of the when he's mentioning anomalies, I think the big piece is if you have scheduling constraints. Like we have some more restrictions on the faculty side, which means that, for example, we only have 2 math teachers right now, and so those 2 math teachers are maxed out. And when they're teaching math, if a kid needs a specific class not at a time available for when those teachers are teaching, then that creates a schedule constraint, which means now instead of 75 classrooms, we have to add an extra section, and that means we're going to be going beyond that 77 likely. The other thing of note there is that we'll need more faculty members to make sure that we're not, to make sure we're actually able to offer the courses, because like I said, even just an example of math, they're booked, right? They're working their tails off. They have full course loads. I think they have five courses, 3 preps, which is a huge load for a normal teacher. So we're going to need to add more faculty members to also accommodate for the new courses that we have.
In addition to that, to recall that another one of the strategies that we use this year to kind of make things work without expanding too greatly on the faculty side is all 3 of our administrators are teaching courses this year. That's not sustainable. I'm teaching a course, Mr. Wagner is teaching a course, Ms. Dinu is teaching 2 sections. Next year, those sections will all expand because Mr. Wagner and I are teaching 11th grade, so we only have 1 section of each of those, but next year that will shift. The 11th grade will have 2 sections each, plus there's 12th grade and so forth. So pulling the administrators back out of it, or even keeping it the same, is still going to cause us to need more staff. And probably not, it'll look on paper like it's not a linear thing. We've been very conservative in our staffing, and we're gonna have to take a little bump up. It's bigger than just adding 2. We're probably gonna need at least 5 new staff members is what we again anticipate for next year.
Thank you. So with that sort of background, you can see on the top of page 5, the chart that predicts and looks to project enrollment per grade level. And in the projections, you can see that our numbers in the high school are conservative, and again, that's advantageous to the facilities constraints and that we just heard. And then we will have, just so you know, that the kindergarten and first and second and third grade will be 3 sections as they are this year, but we will move into a 3rd section of 4th grade as the current 3rd grade in 3 sections moves up. So that is the other increase at East. We do have the room to do that. It's currently being used by student services, but we will domino into that room as a 4th grade classroom next year. You can see also on page 5 perspective look at a 5-year enrollment projection, and in that case, if we move into a potential new home, 1 campus facility by the 25-26 school year, there's some bumps in sections per grade level. Kindergarten and first would go up to 4 sections, and 5th and 6th would go up to 3 sections, again to accommodate the current count of students that we have. And as we grow through the years, our anticipation of larger high school classes is within the projections, but also taking into account the potential for the 8th grade melt, which we know is something that just happens year over year in K-12 institutions, but there's always potential that our numbers in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade would be higher than our projections if we are marketing and enticing further enrollments to compensate for any type of 8th grade melt. So the hope is that those high school grades would be up to 60 sooner rather than later, but again, we're erring on the side of being conservative in our projections so that we can plan realistically for what may be when we move into a new campus. On the next page is the retention data within our enrollment. From last school year to this, you can see the fluctuation that occurs over the course of time. That first row is our January enrollment. That's what we had in each grade level in January. We put out the intent to return survey to families in January, and you can see the numbers of families that did return information saying they did not intend to return, and you can see the numbers of the families in January who did intend to return. Then prior to the close of last school year, so before the last day of school, which was June 7th, you can see that we did have 6 students withdraw from January to June. But the interesting thing to note is the withdrawal that happened over the summer. We had 45 of the students that did submit and commit to return, they did withdraw over the summer. So when I first reported to you about retention after the winter intent to return survey, I came in at a 95% anticipated return, but the actual return percentage from 22-23 to 23-24 was 86%. Still a very good number and still well within kind of the average that Hillsdale member schools see. Additionally, as far as faculty and staff are concerned, we closed the 22-23 school year with 56 employees and 1 vacant position. 48 employees returned for the 23-24 school year, which is a retention rate of 86% as well. 5 of the employees communicated their intent to move on in April when contract and employee agreement conversations were had, and those employees had an exit interview with that administrator. 3 employees changed their intent or changed their minds and decided not to return during the summer break, and 2 of them had an exit interview with an administrator. Currently, as far as faculty and staff go, we've hired a new special education teacher. I believe you were all aware that we had an open position and were contracted with a virtual special education teacher and using a contracting agency to work with her, but we've been able to hire someone on full-time. Fantastic. We've broken the contract with that agency and are moving forward fully staffed in the student services department. And at the time that I submitted my report to you, I was in the process of interviewing candidates for a marketing and a communications position. Since that time, I have hired a part-time marketing and communications manager, and she starts on October 30th. I feel the same. We're very excited to have her get started on Monday and kind of jump right in and help us with the projects that we have coming up in November and in time for enrollment season and all of those things. So the only position that currently stays open is the facilities assistant position. We have not had any interest in that position. So additionally, with faculty and staff, our coaching and educator effectiveness plan is in process. We're rolling that out on our October 12th professional development meeting. Dr. Wozniak and Mr. Wagner presented that program, shared with the teachers how it would roll out and work, also made sure that everybody understood the standards for evaluation and coaching, and we had conversation around those things. The best part was the natural tie-in to the coaching system we already have in place and the Hillsdale method as well. And so we perceived that the teachers understood it and it was well received, and we're now getting them up and running in an online platform where evaluations and feedback forms will be kept. Also, in the realm of professional development, we had Dr. Leonard Sachs to campus in the month of September, and not only did he provide a parent presentation, but he also gave the faculty and staff a presentation, spoke to the topic of instructional methods, best practices with boys, best practices with girls, and the teachers found that very helpful. He gave us a signed copy of each of his books that some of the teachers have already checked out to read and further learn some of his thoughts and perspectives. And then on October 12th, additionally, we had training, safety and security training from the Oconomowoc Police Department, and we had a representative from Francis give a financial advising presentation to everyone taking part in our retirement plan, and that financial advisor also offered one-on-one consultation sessions that the teachers could sign up for in advance. And she was fully booked, I believe, except for 2 of the sessions. So our faculty and staff who are utilizing our retirement plan took advantage of that opportunity. I'd like to move on to the financial reports for this month. In the month of September, we completed the audit, and we're currently awaiting financial reports. In the month of September, we made final adjustments to the budget that we'll be discussing later in the agenda, and we had submitted some grant budgets to receive final allocation of the charter school startup grant by December 1st. And we are waiting to hear any details about the new charter school grant that the state of Wisconsin is rolling out with the beginning of next year. Looking at the income statement and the budget versus actual statement and the bank reconciliation report. Looking at the income statement, you can see the first of 4 per pupil payments was received in September, and the per pupil rate this year is $11,385, which is a substantial increase for this school year compared to last. You'll also notice in the income statement, and you do have these reports attached to your packet if you're wanting to look at them as I go. The purchase services expenses were mostly janitorial costs and facilities costs. The construction services expenses consist of the expansion of the upper elementary building at East, so it's mostly payments to Hunzinger, but also to Bridge Church for the remodel of the lower level. And the first authorizer fee was issued to Waukesha County. If you look next at the budget versus actual report, you'll note that revenue categories are trending as expected for this first fiscal quarter. Salaries are at 13% of the budgeted amount, which is expected. And just to note, we have some 10-month employees and they have the option to get paid over 24 pay periods with a lump sum paid out on June 28th. And most of the 10-month employees do go for that payment option. And so the gross pay for the bulk of the employees is less than it would be if we paid out based on a 21 pay period. And there are a few employees who actually do also take that option. Rent expenses are trending as expected for the first quarter. It's important to note that our construction services will be less than the anticipated $350,000 that we budgeted, because we're coming in at a total cost of about $300,000 for the expansion of the U at East and the remodel of the basement here at West. It does appear on that budget versus actual report to be over, because we initially thought that we would be taking out a loan to pay for this, but have now realized that we can pay for the construction project outright without taking out an additional loan. I think we've mentioned this before, but just to note, utilities has its own line item this fiscal year. In prior years, utilities costs were within building rent, but it's been pulled out as its own line item now. We're a little over in the postage because we had a miscoded invoice for some phone expenses, so we figured out the discrepancy there. And payment to CISA is trending a little higher than anticipated, because we have lost one personnel from the business office, and so we will need to increase the budget for the CISA services until that position can be refilled. The final financial report to view this evening is the bank reconciliation report. And the September bank statement does reconcile with outstanding check in the amount of $154,818.40, and this is mostly the check to Hunzinger for construction from the summer project. The majority of the deposits were for activity fees for registration of enrichment classes for the first semester, and the majority of the checks processed in September were to pay for school supplies and textbooks, the startup new furniture that we purchased for the new classrooms, and again, the construction that we experienced over the summer. And that concludes my financial report summary. So looking back to page 7 of my report, you'll notice just some student success and culture things of note. We took care of our September and October fire drills, and in the student services department, we've had a chance to analyze and compare numbers from this year to last year. And the information or point for me to draw to your attention is that the IEP count has only increased by 3 relative to last year, but the number of severe cases has more than doubled. So our student services, special education teachers and paraprofessionals are working to accommodate that. We also have our response to intervention, or our RTI information there for you on page 8, and relative to last year, we're at about the same students receiving intervention services at East. We also have intervention services at West this year, which is a change from last year. We did not have an interventionist on staff at West last year, and we have a part-time interventionist over here this year. If you note in the athletics and enrichment session, we closed out our cross-country season and are looking into basketball as we look to stay compliant in our probationary years with the WIAA. We're hoping to have a full boys basketball team and a full girls basketball team for the winter. We've added a couple extra classes in the enrichment program since my first board report. We now have a soccer class for kindergartners and first graders, as well as a National Junior Classical League for 7th through 10th graders. And the director of the theater program also increased her cast numbers and is running with both casts full. So just a few more opportunities for students at the close of this school day. An exciting thing to note about the month of September is we have unveiled and claimed a school mascot and are working through a logo campaign right now to design what the image and the graphic will be for the LCCA Sentinel. That's very exciting. We held parent-teacher conferences over the last month and had excellent attendance. 70% of West students and 90% of East students had a parent attend a conference. Those numbers are on trend with past years, and so they continue to be extremely high. And so I just kudos to our parent community for continuing to partner with the school in that way. The Legacy Committee hosted several fun engagement opportunities in the last month, restaurant nights, Sky Zone night, they had a food truck at East. So all of those events were well attended. Moving into the governance and advancement section, when I turned in the report, we were in conversations with Hillsdale about the potential for the support team to visit campus, and since giving you the report, I have confirmed they are going to come to LCCA in November on the 28th and the 29th. So I had submitted at the end of last year that of course we would love to have them, but being in year 3, they could not commit at that time to be able to come at a specific time, and so we worked it out that they're coming in November. We're very excited to have them. They're coming, I think 4 or 5 of the team will be here over those 2 days, which is great. Just so you know, all of our documents and information have been uploaded to a shared website or a shared drive that the Waukesha County Executive and I have access to, and so I've put all of our financial reports, all of the required information is uploaded and compliant in that regard for our authorizer. In the last month, we had a kickoff meeting for the May Gala. We had approximately 12 volunteers attend the 2 meeting opportunities to share ideas and get planning for the May Gala. And we've also had an initial planning meeting for the annual fund campaign associated with November's Giving Day. That happened just this past Friday. That campaign will run in November. Our new marketing and communications manager will be involved in that, and we also have some parent volunteers assisting. So we hope to run that campaign successfully, and we intend to run it with the intention of the raised funds to be allocated toward science equipment across all grade levels. The facilities updates this month are just typical maintenance. And there are some other items that will come up in the agenda for discussion later and for your action on approval, but for now, that concludes my leadership report.
Thank you. Okay, any questions from Margaret on the leadership report? I have just one, and maybe, sorry if you mentioned this. In the enrollment diagram with the pie chart there, is that 14.5% other? Is that private and homeschool? Is that kind of a combination?
It's just
Oh.
other geographical
It's
districts.
geographical, it's
Yeah,
not necessarily.
Too many to have a sliver.
Got it.
So we just grabbed that last, less than 15% and collectively said other.
So the enrollment by district doesn't necessarily mean they're going to public school there, they could be.
That's their district of residence,
Got it.
yes. So the 26.8% doesn't mean that all of those students came from an Oconomowoc school. Some of them may have been homeschooled but live in the Oconomowoc school district.
Other questions?
Yeah, I got a few, and some, couple of comments, I guess. Very thorough report again. A lot of data here to chew on. So kudos to you and your team for getting this all prepared. There's a lot in the October report, for sure. I certainly appreciate all the work that Nicholas and Eric put into the West Plan forward thinking next year. Certainly things I wouldn't have thought about in terms of the balance between space and number of teachers and things like that don't all correlate necessarily to the needs. And I certainly understand the step function increase in staff as you have to do those kind of things. So I appreciate giving the board insight into that well ahead of our budgeting season would be. I guess a question about when you had presented or had stated that the 8 to 12% student retention is about the 8 to 12% I guess turnover of student body is about normal for other BCSI schools, and we were what, like 15-ish% last year.
Yeah, the 8 to 12% is for established.
Yeah.
That's sort of what they see. So the first up to 5 years kind of fluctuates and is expected to be sort of trend high, sway low, whatever it might be. So they really don't start like keeping historical trend until after the 5th year.
So as you look at the projections go forward, like our 5th year would be what, 26, 27, or 25, 26? Are you thinking we'll be in about that range then?
8 to 12% retention.
Turnover, sorry.
If we follow at the average trends of other schools, it's hard to guarantee, but you would think, you would hope.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen the wait lists come down quite a bit in recent years, so I think we're all hopeful that marketing communications will really help us get the word out and those around in our community to see what we have to offer to build that back up.
Our waitlist count at the time of lottery stays strong though, and that's the point at which you would assess the health of the waitlist.
Okay. With the change to the lottery's gonna be a little earlier this year, right?
Later.
Oh, later? Okay.
So instead of running the lottery on February 1st, we'll run it on March
Okay.
1st.
So the intent to return survey will go out.
Also be
Okay.
pushed a month. So rather than have families right after the holidays need to be submitting an intent to return, we'll delay until February.
Okay. I guess on the something that's worked for me in the past, the facilities assistant position, sometimes just tweaking the job title gets back in the top of the thread of the Indeed. So I don't know if there's a possibility of looking at the title, but that might get you some more hits. You mentioned the DPI secured a new grant for charter schools. If I recall, the startup grant that we had was a 5-year that got reduced down to a 4-year, and and then
Now
reduce back down to
closing.
3-year,
Mhm.
so that's close, this is something all together new.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
So we'll be putting in one more hefty claim, prior to the December close of it in order to maximize the money that we were originally
Okay.
allocated.
Alright. And great to hear that we're coming well under budget on the construction. Sorry to hear we had a little turnover in the business office, hopefully you guys can get that back up, I know Laura needs the help, so. That's it. Again, thanks for everything you guys put into this. Look forward to hearing more about what we do next year with West.
Yeah, great job, team, thank you. Any other questions?
That's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
A couple of the same things that popped for me as well. And you said something that I've never heard you say before that I think I'm learning, being on this board. I'm newish when you say that, and I'm paraphrasing, that Hillsdale looks at these schools over the first 5 years of like the dust settles. So I think it's important that when we see numbers we don't like for example, for retention, you anticipated 95%, actual is 9%. So we could look at that and say, oh my goodness, but it's important not to have a reflexive response to that because this is this market, it's not every other market, and we've got a 5-year kind of figuring out. You're gonna get better at anticipating this once you see patterns. Like we get strategic when we identify patterns. So that's a good insight for me. I am stunned at the amount of work that this team is doing. So I concur with Brian. I'm just stunned that you're able to do all of this work and provide the best educational product in the marketplace. One thing that popped for me in an early page, I'm not gonna find it fast, but do we have at least one family driving from Watertown?
At least one,
How far of a drive is that from here?
third half an hour.
Okay, so, and can we just get real? The most important thing is a marketing comms person. I mean, that's, as a comms guy, like I love that. And you know, it's frustrating sometimes not to have somebody like that on staff, but I think it was prudent to wait because there are other parts of the plane you were building as it was going down the runway, but this is a really good time for that. And when I see this, when I see the commitment of the families to this school to drive their children, spend hours and hours and hours in the car to come here, just makes me think about things like case studies and stuff like that that your marketing person can jump into. So I'm excited about that. So Nicholas, and is it Eric?
Mm-hmm.
Learning. A question kind of implicit in what you were talking about, I think, is the fact that we've got expanding need and finite space right now. And so you're kind of Jenga with this. You're kind of, it's a shell game. You're moving stuff around, and I hope you don't have to end up using the gym. I hope, because I want full use out of that. But one thing that's common in higher ed is professors migrating from classroom to classroom. That's no big deal. In high school, it's a little atypical. Kind of implicit in what you're saying, and you didn't really get to it, is there any concern about the impact on faculty that this could have, and morale and attrition or anything like that? Do you have any kind of finger on the pulse of, could this result in short-term collateral damage with people leaving or people being burnt out or anything like that? I don't have a sense of high school teachers and staff and what this could potentially have. You kind of, your comments stop short of addressing that, but I'd really love to hear any comments you have on that.
I'll start and then you want to chime in. We, as Dr. Wozniak said, we anticipated that it was a possibility that the teachers would need to be rotational this year, and so we did prep them at the close of last year that
Right.
that was highly likely scenario. And you know, it's not ideal for them. The 2 classes that I teach this year, one is in the basement, and the very next period I'm on the first floor, and it is a juggle and a struggle. So it is not ideal, but we did not lose anyone last year to this year with them thinking that that would be the likely scenario. And we also intend to, as they mentioned, need to add approximately 5 more members to the team and we're hoping that our current staff, having had that time to maybe think and anticipate what a rotational schedule would feel like, would still return when we tell them again.
Right.
Well, next year it's probably the real deal.
Kind of harder sell.
Yeah, but would you
I
concur that
yeah.
they?
And the other piece I wanted to add, if I may, is I think we have a very dedicated faculty right now, a very dedicated group that is really gelling at the upper school, more so than the first 2 years. I think everyone still understands that the school is still in its infancy and that these things are temporary hurdles that we need to work through. I think we do a lot of talking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what is it going to look like and so forth. So my personal hope is that those types of conversations get people through, give them the tenacity to go through the challenges that we have. But anytime you increase the stress on someone, you have the likelihood of people getting burnt out or whatever. But I think there's a lot of things positive that I think will minimize any fears that we're going to lose a big group or something like that.
Okay.
So I have two thoughts. One of them is during our PE day, I was surprised in a good way at how positive our faculty as a whole, and including the upper school, are about our culture, about what we're doing here. And I think the other thought is, if they have something to look forward to, they're more likely to stay, if that makes sense. So looking ahead to the next years, if they know that this is temporary, then that is something that you can hang tight for and endure.
All right, thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the treasurer's report, Ryan.
Okay. Keep it short and sweet. A lot of this is also provided in the budget information that we'll be going over here regarding cash, but the overall school liquidity remains exceptionally strong. We're trending about the same level of cash improvement year over year. So we ended at the end of September about 1.78 million versus 1.18 million the year before, so that's at 600,000. And that represents 93 days cash on hand. So 1 quarter of a year, essentially 3 months worth of reserves for a school this young is good, really good. Looking out into the future, as the Martin team look out 6 months, we're looking pretty comparable to where we were a month ago. So if we go out towards the end of February, we're pretty much at the same spot, about 2.5 million in cash. So other than that, the only thing to report is the line of credit renewal did complete September 18th. So the limit on the line of credit is 500,000. That remains the same as what we had the year prior. But just looking at cash projections, there's really no foreseen need to draw on that. As Margaret mentioned, we were able to pay for all the construction out of our cash. We didn't take out any additional debt, so that's great. Certainly puts us in a good position for one campus project. That's it.
Great. Any comments or questions for Brian? Okay, thank you. So moving on to the president's report. So I have 2 updates that I wanted to share with the board and the school community. First is our One Campus update. So the school's One Campus search team has concluded its RFP process and reviewing proposals and conducting interviews and making a recommendation to the LCCA board on both architecture and construction for our future One Campus site. The board did approve the team's recommendation to move forward with Catalyst Construction and Excel Engineering at a board closed session on October 3rd. The board will meet again in closed session at the conclusion of tonight's meeting to discuss and vote on the One Campus team's financing recommendation for this project. The school leadership team will soon begin regular meetings with Excel Engineering to fine-tune the programming study so that Excel can develop the schematic design for the future K-12 classroom building. Both Catalyst Construction and Excel Engineering are assisting us with securing the site in the Lake Country area. Due to the sensitive nature of these negotiations, details on the potential site will remain confidential at this time. But our projected construction timeline has LCCA taking possession of the new One Campus site by the summer of 2025. Beginning in November, next month, we will share high-level executive summaries with LCCA families, both during regular monthly board meetings and in the Revere newsletter. We're excited to be embarking on this exciting next step for LCCA, and we appreciate the school community's support and patience as we navigate this delicate and extremely important project. So, any questions about that?
When you reference the school committee, who is that?
So the school committee is made up of, thank you, combination of mostly members of the school leadership team. So is Margaret, Peter Knapp, who's our facilities supervisor, Lori Pari, our business manager.
Okay.
Also, Brian has been involved in discussions with financing and interviews there. I've been involved with some of the interviews with construction.
Okay.
But it's not a board committee per se, it's definitely the school committee.
Driven by the school.
John Heller, excuse me, so we have a couple of volunteers from the community. John Heller, his grandchildren in school, and he's in commercial real estate broker. Also, Paul Buffon, who also has a parent and has experience in facilities. Any other questions? But y'all will share as much as information we can as we're able. Working on this as hard as possible. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to update everyone on, I had the opportunity to go to a week-long fundraising conference at the Leadership Institute in Washington, D.C. It was a week-long comprehensive fundraising opportunity, and it was extremely informative, and I'm excited to share what I've learned with the board and staff in terms of how we can build a better pipeline of donors via prospecting and direct mail, as well as grant writing and cultivation of major donors. Those are kind of the main focus. The fundraising strategies and tactics that I learned will be extremely helpful for our team as we embark on raising money for our one campus school, as well as ongoing operational needs that we have year after year. So, anyway, so grateful for the opportunity. Any questions on any of that? Okay, then we are moving on to a couple discussion items. And the first one up is retirement plan committee update.
Yes, so actually, you want to just take a tap and
Sure.
this down. The retirement plan committee met on September 11th, and the task was to finalize and approve the investment plan policy. And within that conversation, the Francis advisor kind of delineated and really spelled out the responsibilities that remain with the board in regards to the retirement plan. So if you flip to, I just gave you pages 4, 5, and 6. So if you look at page 4, you'll see letter B is assignment of authority. Letter C is assignment of responsibilities. And I know we've had conversation before, so I just wanted to follow up on the responsibilities that remain with you, members of the LCCA board, but then also the responsibilities that you delegated to the committee. And those are spelled out on page 5, and then the last few actually go up to the top of page 6. But you can see there sort of the differentiation between what still remains within your responsibility and fiduciary responsibility as board members, and then what you've proxied, if you will, to the committee members. And with that said, we had one committee member who needed to bow out for some personal reasons. So I do have a revised resolution. If you recall, you've signed this once already, appointing the retirement plan committee, but with the removal of that one member, I think I should get your signatures again now with this updated version. So if you don't mind, that resolution again is the one you previously signed with the removal of the one of the committee members. But at that committee meeting, we discussed the retirement plan policy in its entirety and have each as committee members signed off on that, accepting all of these fiduciary duties assigned to and delegated by you to the retirement plan committee. And so I'm not sure if this is an item for discussion, but I did want to just bring that further explanation to you, as I know we had discussed it in the past. Are there any questions? We will be, as a committee, reporting annually to you, the board, on the quarterly meetings that the committee has. Again, just keeping care over the retirement plan that LCCA offers to its employees.
That's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Can I move straight into the next discussion item? Because that's also me, and it ties in with sort of much of what we're talking about financially this evening. But the next item on the discussion list is in reference to the Edward Jones stock that LCCA had gifted to us. We are investigating the possible sale of that donated stock, in conversation with our Edward Jones consultant on whether it's wise to sell, whether we should keep it, and consider investing it in CDs and or other money market fund accounts. We have not gleaned enough information to have a decision on what we should do, but we are receiving guidance and information and are in conversation with the Edwards Jones consultant or representative, and looking to see what the most advantageous use of that stock would be for us, whether it's sell or invest. And that takes me also to the investment opportunity, the next item on our discussion list, because we are in conversation with Edward Jones as well as Waukesha State Bank and Town Bank, because we're looking to diversify some of our cash on hand, and we'd like to do that as soon as possible. So partnering that possibility with the stock and understanding kind of what our whole portfolio of investments could be is something that Mrs. Kari is doing, and gathering all the information that we may need to make fiscally responsible decisions in those regards. I did want to bring it for discussion to know if you had any suggestions or thoughts on those two opportunities.
Is, you said Town Bank, Waukesha State Bank, and what was the third?
Edward Jones.
Edward Jones, okay.
They have some options.
Do they work in conjunction with each other? Or?
No, we're looking at like what are some of the opportunities that Town Bank could offer us. We also are looking at and are receiving advisement or advice that we should maybe have more than one account, so that all of our cash on hand isn't sitting in one bank account, but we would maybe have a couple different and be investing some of it and all of that. So we're having conversations with all those different financial institutions to sort of see what they have to offer and what they are suggesting that we do in order to make an educated decision.
Is Waukesha State Bank, I can't recall from the loan documents if we have to retain all of our deposits with them. That'd be something to look into. If they have a restriction on us moving our money as part of the line of credit agreement. If they don't, I think that's prudent to look at other options. There's, off the top of my head, I know there are companies that specialize in essentially making deposits at or below the FDIC insured level. They essentially deposit the money in multiple locations, but you're essentially under one umbrella. Edward Jones might even know about that.
Yes,
The local company I'm thinking of was American Deposit Management. But
American Deposit Management?
yeah, but there could be others.
Okay.
I know the principal there has attended a few of our galas, so it might be worth having a discussion
Okay.
with her.
Did you get that? Sorry.
I can get some of the information.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Relatively recently, we engaged in about a 4-month, pretty exhaustive process to do this. How can we maximize the money and cash we have on hand, still keep it relatively liquid and conservative? And the move we made is resulting in us doubling the interest that we're earning. So if you want to offline on that, I can connect you on the vehicles. And you mentioned something really important, that a vehicle that's FDIC insured or not is really important component of that too. But it's too much for this meeting, but if you want to offline on that, I can connect you with.
Great. Excellent.
Not that we would do this, but an alternative strategy that would save us about 7% interest, we could pay our term note off. That would instantly earn us 7% a year. If we felt we were liquid enough that we didn't need that, we do have a $500,000 line of credit that you can tap into at some point.
Thank you.
Alright, so we'll go there. Okay. Thank you. So now we're gonna move into the action items for the evening. We have 5 of them. And the first one, the first one is actually, we have a new board member appointment, Stacy Wren. So what I'd like to do first is have someone make a motion to approve her appointment, and then we'll have some discussion. So would someone like to make a motion to, actually, I'll read her bio during the discussion portion, okay?
Okay.
So would someone like to make a motion to approve her appointment?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, okay. So Stacy Wren, I will read her bio for everyone. She did send a letter of interest, which is included in the agenda for the public to see. But Stacy Wren has more than 33 years of teaching experience, the vast majority of which was in classical education. She started her teaching career as a first grade teacher at Ben Franklin Elementary School in Mesa, Arizona, where her biggest takeaway was the importance of using the phonics program to teach reading and spelling. It is clear to her that phonics is the foundation for a child's language success. 2 years later, she returned to the Milwaukee area and taught at Brookfield Academy for 31 years, where she saw how a child flourishes from quality academics, character education, and high expectations. During her tenure at Brookfield Academy, Stacy held a variety of different positions. She taught K4 and K5, first grade, and some classes in the Academy's summer program. She was the math chair for the primary school for 16 years. In this position, she assisted with the implementation of Singapore math and the training of teachers in the use of the program. While teaching K4 in first grade, Stacy held the role of a level leader, a person who is responsible for overseeing the curriculum, facilitating weekly meetings for level teachers, and guiding fellow colleagues with academic instruction. She also was part of the admissions committee and tutored students during the school year and summer. Stacy retired from teaching in 2021, and she and her husband have 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren, and they reside in Brookfield, Wisconsin. So, would everyone like to kind of share their thoughts?
Sure. I had a very productive conversation with her. I like her a lot. She's very sharp. I talked to her about what I know about the school and the role of the board and all of that, and she was tracking with all that. I think her credentials are incredible and incredibly relevant to the school. I'm very much behind this nomination.
Brian and Taryn, do you want to share? Do you want to go first?
Sure. Let me find my notes. I agree with Tom that her background, none of us are educators, will provide good insight into some of the moving pieces, some of the questions we may not think to ask. Being from the business world, I'm trying to learn what CLT and these other standardized tests mean. I see that her background is in classical education. That's obviously a benefit. That's what we are doing here. And the statement was, doing things the tried and true way, which is makes us classical. Currently have a slight out of balance of number of parents to non-parents on our board, so I think that would help balance the board out. She has worked with Margaret in the past, and I feel that she has adequately given us a response on just being objective in her decision making and what she offers to the board. So.
You both kind of covered a lot of what I was going to say, but just to reiterate, I support her nomination as well. She's been a teacher and a leader for 30 years in a well-respected classical institution that I think she's been living the same mission that we're living now and understands it and can help us better understand areas, like you said, of the testing and things that go on. And I know she's willing to jump in and do the work and actually be the board secretary and do the work of that. So I would be grateful to have that help. And I think as we look to build our board, it's important that we consider various skills and perspectives. And she certainly brings an academic perspective that the board doesn't really have and has not had. And it's not just any educator; she knows classical. So to me, I think she is a very good fit. Ready to vote? Okay. So it has been motioned to approve the board membership for Stacy Wren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
And the motion passes. Okay, on to the 23-24 budget.
Actually, so would she be active at our next meeting then?
She will be active at the next meeting. Yep.
Or installed at the next meeting?
Yes, and actually, tonight we just appointed her as a board member. We'll have to actually officially appoint her as secretary. If she's still willing to do that. So yeah, on to the 2023-2024 budget. Margaret.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I can't remember what you have already in hand or what you don't. If you'd like a copy of the proposed 23-24 budget, I've made copies for you. We have, as I mentioned, over the last month, gone back and fine-tuned several things within the budget, but you've been in on the budget process all along. We've had some preliminary. Last month we talked about it, with some updates and some changes. Between that conversation and this, there's kind of two significant things to point out that you may have noticed if you did comparison. One is we did reduce the expected revenue of the May gala, just to be a little bit more conservative and prudent in expectation of fundraising. So rather than putting $380,000 from the gala into our revenue, we downsized slightly to $300,000. Not that our goal and hope for that event doesn't remain high, but to be conservative, we tweaked a little bit there. Also, the other significant thing of note is we finally received and finalized the information and data of all employee selections for benefits, and where that all shook out and what that all did was very advantageous in the salary and benefits section of the budget. So last month, we discussed an increase so that I might have the room to do the marketing communications position and some other things. And we asked, and now you can see that that increase was actually not necessary to that full extent. And so the increase from the original very preliminary budget is closer to 67,000 rather than that 200 number you see there. And again, that's due to all of the information that we have now that we're past the enrollment season into health benefit opportunities for faculty and staff. Beyond that, the budget remains fairly similar to the renditions that you have seen in recent months. And again, I applaud and commend my team for all of the work that they have done fine-tuning and assessing as we learn and know through experience over the last few years, to give ourselves some information and some perspective in what we think will happen in the upcoming year. These projections seem to be what we need and what we're hoping for to allow us to have a very successful 23-24 school year. And I just want to make sure that their efforts are recognized as I bring the budget before you and ask for your final approval for this 2023-2024 school year budget.
Okay. Questions for Margaret on the budget?
No, I appreciate it, all the work that was put into it, providing the ratios, that's very helpful. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the budget as presented.
I appreciate the fact that you're taking things like the gala, and know that the board pronounces that word 3 different ways. And you're being conservative about it and not being assumptive about, yeah, we're gonna have this revenue. I think it's very strategic and prudent, and I appreciate that you're erring on a side of conservatism rather than assuming that stuff's coming in.
What did we do in the gala last year? I don't remember.
Just under 3.
Just under 3. So, kind of keeping it flat.
Yeah, we've already got things in place where we can exceed that, but I agree, it's good to be conservative.
That's fine.
And hopefully exceed expectation.
Of course.
I'd also like to thank Lori Kari for her hard work on all of this. She's put in a ton of time in helping Margaret with the budget, so thank you. Any other, are we ready for a vote?
I guess one quick clarifying question. The remainder of the Wayne West Night Foundation pension grant, is that excluded from these revenues?
That's outside.
Okay, so that would go to a restricted fund of some kind?
Yes,
Okay.
so there is $100,000 from this past payroll that's being matched by $100,000 from William S. Knight, so 200 total. We have already submitted that to William S. Knight Foundation, and they have approved that, and they'll be sending us a check. So that money will be earmarked for soft costs for the this building project outside of this budget.
Excellent.
I don't think we made a motion, did we?
No, I think you're wrong.
We just, okay. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 budget as presented?
So, I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the 2023-24 budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion passes. Okay. Now on to a couple, the next 3 items are board related, things that we just need to take a look at. So the first one is the board planning calendar, and I wanted to share this mainly, for the board, of course, but also for others in our school community who might wonder sort of what is it that the school board does, what do we monitor? This calendar, what do we do? So we, overall our job is to monitor performance, ensure performance, that the school's performing the way it should. So we attend a board training conference at Hillsdale, and this past April, one of the presentations was on specifically what you're monitoring as a board and how to organize that and make it clear for our board to understand what is it that we're responsible for looking at, and what that's tied to our charter agreement with our authorizer, but also things that we as a board want to keep an eye on in terms of school performance. And what are those items? And so in this document that I've shared with you, the board planning calendar, it's divided by category, also by item, and then if it's actually linked to the charter in some place, and how often we're monitoring these items, and then by month. So each month here is our board meeting, our monthly open board meeting. So when we're going to plan our agenda each month, we take a look at the board planning calendar and say, okay, here's what we're going to need to be monitoring this month, and Margaret then knows to have those reports presented at that board meeting, and maybe included in her school leader report, or it might be a separate item pulled out, but everyone's clear on what it is that we're looking at and monitoring by month. And these are regular things that we will continue to do every year after year. So, there may be modifications made to this here and there, which would then be brought back to the board for approval, but as of right now, we've gone back and forth, and I think we have this in a really good spot in terms of what needs to be looked at and how frequently. So, any questions about this calendar?
It's very helpful.
Well, let's make a motion first, and then if there's further discussion, would someone like to move to approve the board planning calendar for this fiscal year?
I'll make a motion to approve the board calendar for this year.
Second?
Second?
Any further discussion?
Just in looking at it now, I guess the question would be, October by far is the heaviest month with 25 items on it. It's going to be a very hefty packet. Are there any items that we should shift around so that no one month stands out as such a high water month? Or is it based on the flow of school operations the best month to have all that? Just as a thought as I'm looking at it.
That's a good idea.
It's a good thought. I think I guess I'd leave that up to Margaret, because she would really know the cadence of what happens and when the information is available, and in October just happens to be a busy month, and that's.
I think the meat of it all is the enrollment and the comparison to the previous year and the retention of both students and faculty staff. And it feels good. I don't want to speak for my team, but I'm going to speak for my team. It feels good on my end to sort of have that closure, like the comparison to last year. It's presented, it's done, and now we're moving forward in this year and looking ahead to next. So I wouldn't want to delay communicating to you that comparative information, but I agree October feels heavy, but I think I would rather do it now and have it done than delay it, if that's okay.
And what we could do too, I mean, obviously we're doing it tonight in terms of what's happening. So if when we update this for the next fiscal year, if you want to move anything around, so that it doesn't all fall in October next year, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Okay, so are we ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Okay, let's vote. It has been moved and seconded to approve the 23-24 board planning calendar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion passes. All right, thank you. The next item is we have a revised public comment policy, and so I'm gonna pull that up really quick. This was just a couple minor changes, or not even changes, I'm sorry, additions to clarify this policy in order to have things flow efficiently in meetings and so that those who want to make public comment understand the process. The three main things that I clarified in here in the red line, which you should have all received. So public comment will only be allowed during the citizens forum, not at other parts of the meeting. So any topic that wants to be brought up can be done in that period only. Also, questions from the audience cannot be raised at any, really, there's no questions that should be raised at any time during the meeting to the board. It's more of a formal process following the Roberts rules. So any questions that people in the audience may have for the board need to wait until, either early before the meeting starts or afterwards. But we cannot address questions from the audience during any time of the meeting. Also, public forms, the public comment forms that are filled out when someone wants to make a comment need to be filled out and submitted to the board secretary prior to meeting start time. So if someone shows up a little late and didn't get a chance to fill that in, unfortunately, you won't be able to make a comment after the meeting starts. But as long as we have that paper before the meeting's called to order, everyone's welcome to make a public comment. So, would someone like to make a motion to approve the revised public comments policy?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised public commentary policy.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any questions or clarification? Anyone needs on that? Okay, then I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor of approving the revised public comments policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the motion passes. And on to the last action item, which is the board conflict of interest policy and annual statement. So this is actually something that, there are no changes to this. This is exactly what everyone signed last year. It's just that we should have signed it in July, and with everything else we had going on, I think we forgot to bring this up at the July meeting. So normally, the conflict of interest policy will be revisited, approved, and then everyone will sign it every July. So this is a statement that as a nonprofit entity, we need to ensure that all board members, there's no conflict of interest financially, and then if the board deemed there was some sort of conflict of interest, that we would need to have a procedure, which this document does, in terms of how we would identify that, and the board member would need to basically, reveal what that conflict is, and then maybe they don't vote on something, or how that works. So, I'm looking through this, not sure if you all had a chance to look through it, but the very last page is what we all need to sign at the end of the meeting. Fill that out and we'll just put those on file. And so with that, would someone like to make a motion to approve the conflict of interest policy and annual statement?
I move to approve
Okay.
the policy statement.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And any discussion or questions about this?
Technically, the board calendar said this was supposed to be July, so
Yes.
we're at 27 items now, 25.
We will move it to July. It'll be, that's when I will move. Yes. Okay, all right. It has been moved and seconded to approve the conflict of interest policy and annual statement. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes, and please don't leave without signing it. Great. And lastly, we are going to start doing, and we'll make this quick tonight because I know it's been a long meeting and we don't want to extend it much longer. So, but I think it's important that we all focus on, what we're doing as a board and what our purpose is and how we're working together. We do have the benefit of going to Hillsdale College up to 2 times a year for board training, but it's nice to have little refreshers here and there, and I think that as we work towards being more of a governing board, it's a good reminder to review these things on occasion. And so there's a book actually that Hillsdale College recommends that all boards use almost as their Bible, and it's Boards That Make a Difference by John Carver. It's a policy governance for those who aren't familiar with this book, but most of the board members here have it, and welcome to borrow, have an extra copy. But in particular tonight, I thought we would focus on this one section, which I included in the agenda. I'm not sure if you all saw it, but it's talking about Chapter 5, Controlling Ethics and Prudence. What's okay, what's not okay, even if it works. So it talks about, which I think is so true in a lot of what we're going through, what we have, all of us have experienced at one time or another in terms of most boards, the greatest, I'm just gonna read a couple passages here from this text. For most boards, the greatest source of complexity and unfortunately interest is not the ends, but staff operations. So when I say ends, I mean it's what we're looking at, what we're monitoring in terms of performance, not how we're getting there. So it's staff operations being the means of how the work is being done and why it's being done. It says here, boards may delve into staff matters because a particular board member has either the relevant expertise or mere curiosity about some aspect of operations. It's not uncommon for an entire board to be drawn into an issue only because it's a concern of one or two persons. The board's job is thus not defined by a carefully constructed design of the task, but by a laundry list of individual interests. Boards are entangled in and seduced by the needs of their subordinates. As if by an irresistible force, board members are drawn into staff issues like the following, and there's several that are listed in here. I'm gonna attempt to look at it, but it's tempting to want to ask questions about why and how, about personnel, compensation, accounting, budgeting, facilities, and how space is allocated. Thank you for explaining that tonight. But those are things that really aren't our realm, but it's tempting to ask questions about that really we should not be delving into. As well, communications, there's a long list of them. So mainly, I guess, I want to open this up for our discussion here for 5 minutes or so, but the main thing I wanted to get across is that we just need to be really careful about when we're, apart from being prudent and ethical, the activities that go on at the school below the level of the chief executive, or in this case, our head principal, really are completely immaterial. The board need only involve.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, okay. Apart from being prudent and ethical, the activities that go on at or below the level of chief executive are completely immaterial. The board need only involve itself in executive means to make sure that acceptable standards of prudence and ethics are being met. So, those are the key highlights that I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think that ethos is a best practice of high functioning boards. I think it's really important. And this board, I know that we talked at length about this, that we have, varying views as a board as to how involved in some of these matters we should be. I'm of the mind that when you have the right team in place, you have the governance structure and you stay up high. And I think we should be asking questions where they're relevant, but only in terms of that macro view. That's where I'm comfortable. That's what I think we should be doing.
Well, I think too,
and I haven't read the book, so I might be. Thank you. I'll get right on that.
Yes, but I think hopefully the board calendar will really help steer us. I think that's going to be key to knowing, okay, what is our lane, and this is what we're monitoring, and anything beyond that, really isn't what's wrong.
I think so. And so I might have broken protocol with my email to you. Did I break protocol? I sent you that email on that resource that I thought you might be interested in.
I don't know.
So it wasn't a question or anything about operations. It was, hey, this is something in other schools using. I heard about. I thought you might be interested.
Yeah, we're technically not supposed to give suggestions.
Right. So.
Technically, I guess you did.
So yeah. So I won't do that again.
Yeah, I read through the chapter, and it's a it can be a bit of a hard thing to grasp, depending on the matter. So, for example, the your mind obviously we're just one voice, we're not directing, we're participating as committee members. But I could see something like that being considered in the weeds of operational and or even being involved with grants and those kind of things. That's cited.
Yeah.
The trap they say is you gotta be careful not becoming guilty of rubber stamping things. Essentially, if you don't, it's essentially he kept using the term, don't like oversee the means of how something is done, but the results of what the means are meant to accomplish.
Yep.
So the words I think John Carver used for a board may consequentially go through the motions, but they don't really understand what the means are. And essentially you're rubber stamping those things. So having depth on the board and areas of expertise, I think, will allow us to offer discussion. My area of expertise is finance. I don't know much at all about academics. So for me to think of something intelligent to say, somebody else on the board would have to have an expertise there that could offer a suggestion or a discussion point. So I think that's important, in particular, as we try and get our board built up to where we want it to be. So it's definitely a fine line. I think he used the word, the question ultimately when it comes down to ethics and prudence is the telling test for a board is to ask itself what it would disprove. If you don't know this, then the approval process is without direction or at worst a sham. So if you know what you would, if you don't know what you would disprove, then it's hard to approve something. You don't know the difference between the two. So that was in the approvability section.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway I took was that operations and managing the day-to-day things that go on in the school, whether it's budgeting or enrollment or whatever the activity is, that the decisions that are made at Margaret's level or below are not something that we should be questioning why they do it or how they do it or providing suggestions on how they're doing it, unless Margaret or a member of her team says, you know, I could use a little help with this, maybe we don't have someone to do fundraising yet. I've been helping with a little bit of fundraising, which I think the board should be involved in that anyway, but as you've built your team, we've been able to get more and more out of your business, basically, and I think that's extremely important. So in terms of your question about committees for the one campus, I think that the board may have a role to play if that's something that really will be driven. You know, Margaret's going to be working, and her team are going to be working closely with the construction firm Catalyst and Excel. They'll be providing the board with high-level executive summaries and updates. And other than that, the board really will not be involved in all that the day-to-day with that project. So unless you reach out and say, I need help.
My sense is that the KPI exercise that we did, it was more of an exercise, that initiative that we did, should be the touchstone for the board. Looking at those KPIs and saying, top line, are these being met? With respect to, so Brian is the finance expert on the board. I have a comms background. My take on this is, I don't need to see the comms plan. I don't need to, you haven't asked me anything about interviewing people or hiring people, and I know you've got it. And if you need help, and you have reached out to me on a couple things. Hey, what's your take on X, Y, and Z? But my take on this is that you'll drive those interactions, and that I'm here from a kind of a to provide counsel as needed. But I have no desire to know every single inner working of comps. And not that I don't care, but you have a team here, and that's what the team does.
All right, any other thoughts, or should we move on? Come up with maybe a calendar of various topics we can address, maybe edit or planning calendar.
I like that ad, and I will read it.
Okay, so with that, we are actually going to be moving into closed session under state statute 19.851E to discuss the purchasing of public properties in which competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Would someone like to make a motion to move into closed session?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Discussion on that?
Just a short ride in the restroom.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of going into closed session, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion passes. We are now in closed session.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good rest of the week.